Greetings, everybody! Once again, it is I, the Nomad, coming to you live from the wastelands of the internet. Yes, to bring you news of the day, news of the week, news as I see it, and the news that I consider what I want to look at. I don't really care what the regular people think. I'm just going to talk about news that concerns me for the most part. Good morning, Mr. Barkley. I see that you're there. Yeah, I recently bought a new car, and so I kind of know what you're doing. I wish I was a little more frugal, right? Than obviously uh, you've been, which is not necessarily a good thing on my part, but it is what it is, and we can continue. Um, there is news, some positive, some negative. Let's get started because I got a lot to cover, lots to cover. So, European leaders visit Kiev and tell Russia 30-day ceasefire now or face massive sanctions. The leaders of Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Poland have told the Russian leader Vladimir Putin to agree to a 30-day ceasefire starting on Monday or face possible massive sanctions, according to French President Macron, on a highly symbolic visit to Kiev. Highly symbolic. The demand comes with the backing of the White House after a joint phone call with President Donald Trump, the Europeans said. Standing alongside Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev, the four leaders, Macron, the new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and his Polish counterpart Donald Tusk, said that the ceasefire should be observed on land, at sea, and in the air. If successful, Macron said, and yes, I am mispronouncing his name intentionally, all right, it could pave the way for immediate launch of negotiations to build a robust and lasting peace. Massive sanctions. Why haven't you already outright, if you were serious about peace, if you were serious about, standing up to the big Vladimir Putin in Russia, why haven't you banned all their goods already? What sanctions are you going to place on him? I'm totally serious. What sanctions? Macaroon? You guys talk a good game. But when it comes to put up or shut up, you always shut up. Nothing you say is going to impress Putin. Nothing you say is going to impress him. You haven't done anything. You're still not living up to your NATO commitments. You're still not doing anything. They don't really talk a good game either, to be honest. That's very true, Mr. Barkley. That's very true. You don't live up to your NATO commitments. Germany still is purchasing, massive tons of gas, of natural gas and oil from Russia because, quite frankly, they can't survive without it. What are you going to sanction them with? We tried to explain to the Germans back in the day that if you really want to sanction Russia, you've got to sit up there and be willing to take U.S. oil, U.S. commitments. But you queered that deal because you refused to listen. Now you're we're gonna get serious this time. Yeah. I bet Putin is just shaking in his shoes. Now, I'm not a. I'm sure Russia will keep selling them gas if they were at war. This is the problem that a lot of this stuff has, quite frankly. Um, it is one of the things that I don't think that people understand. All right. So let's go and take a look at the war front here as from Live Map. As you can see, the battles are still continuing. I'll be honest with you, had a lot of hope that the ceasefire, that they would be willing to create a ceasefire, but it doesn't look to me as if they are. They're still pushing toward Perovsk. They have made headway in this area here. It is slow progress. It is a slog, but that's how the Russians fight, right? They're not looking at different things. So, as you can hear, a little dinging going on. My sister is all concerned because my brother in Tennessee got an earthquake. But as you can see, there's areas here that they're moving in. One of the things that I did notice down here is they're trying to do a consolidated push along these lines. All right, and also there's a gap here that they're looking to try and exploit. Now I'm not sure what they're trying to exploit here, but they've obviously trying to encapsulate this town right here and fully invest it. All right, and it looks like they're trying to cut that off over here with the Provosk uh, movement further down right here. It looks like what they're trying to do is cut the M30 as they try to take this area. I think if they believe that if they can take this area and hold it, they basically end the supplies here and then can, for all intents and purposes, push anything that was coming here and being used for the H-32 would be cut off for the most part. Um, and you can see that they've moved out here and there to try and break this. It looks like this is going to be their last big major push if they decide to continue with the ceasefire. One of the things that is concerning me, however, is you're starting to see more activity here at the Kherson regions. This tells me that the Russians aren't serious about any kind of ceasefire, or it makes me concerned that they're more intent on taking Kherson, and that they're getting ready to ramp that up. And I don't, I don't. It'd be nice for peace. It'd be nice for a true 30-day ceasefire. I just don't think Putin's going to agree to it. I hate to say that, but I truly don't think that Putin is going to agree to it. Now, on the positive side of things, and this is an interesting possible outcome, okay, is this: Turkey is ready to undertake duty for observing a potential ceasefire in the Ukraine, sources say. Turkey is ready to take the duty to observe a possible ceasefire in Ukraine, its foreign minister said, all right, during a coalition of the willing call to Kiev's partners on Saturday, a Turkish foreign ministry source said. The leaders of Britain, France, Germany, Poland, the so-called Coalition of the Willing, and Ukraine met in Kiev on Saturday. They agreed to an unconditional 30-day ceasefire on May 12th with the backing of President Donald Trump, the Orange Hitler, threatening President Vladimir Putin with massive sanctions if he failed to comply. Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan joined the coalition of the willing call and emphasized Turkey's commitment to Ukraine's territorial integrity. The Turkish Foreign Ministry source, speaking on the condition of anonymity, Fidan voiced Ankara's support for efforts for an unconditional ceasefire and added that Turkey was ready to undertake the duty for observing the ceasefire in the Ukraine if it is established. Okay. NATO member Turkey has maintained cordial ties with both Kiev and Moscow since Russia's full-scale invasion in Ukraine in 2022. It has voiced support for Ukraine's territorial integrity and provided it with military help while opposing sanctions on Russia. This is an interesting twist. Okay, Turkey is a NATO member, but as a NATO member, I want people to understand this, and they've been a NATO member for decades. Okay, they have a how do I put this? Contentious, I guess is the word. Contentious history with Russia, but at the same time, it's less adversarial. It's less visceral, right? It's a less of a visceral kind of a thing today. But Turkey is the only NATO member to have a war with another NATO member while they were both a part of NATO, which is they had a fight over Cyprus, right, with Greece. And it was a hot war. So they have some experience on dealing on both sides of an issue such as this. Okay. It's it is an interesting artifact of things. I would love it. I'm serious. I would love it if Turkey did sit up there and step into that role because it does meet a lot of Volodymyr Zelensky's issues, right? Because he can't trust Russia, and it also gives the possibility of something that Russia will agree to. Okay, the hard thing about getting Russia to agree to anything, there's twofold. First of all, and I think this is even more important. Okay, I really do. Russia's winning the war. They are grinding the Ukraine down. They're winning. So it's a meat grinder. Their own people are dying massively. All right. But this is how Russia fights wars. And Putin isn't willing necessarily to listen to people say, well, let's talk peace when we're winning the war. That, that's the reality. They have survived the big counterpunch in the night in 2022, 2023, and have now slowly taken the offensive and are now on a steady offensive, pushing back the Ukrainian forces. And they've been adamant about any kind of NATO troops being part of some kind of ceasefire. They've been adamant saying that can't happen. Well, maybe they're willing to relent here if they let Turkey in. So, from that standpoint, it's a good thing. But Russia really doesn't want NATO on that line. Howdy, James. So, on to the next story. India and Pakistan agree to a ceasefire in U.S. mediated talks. Islamabad. India and Pakistan on Saturday agreed to a ceasefire following U.S. led talks to end the most serious military confrontation between the nuclear armed rivals in decades. The deal follows weeks of clashes, missiles, and drone strikes across their borders that were triggered by a gun massacre of tourists last month that India blames on Pakistan, which denies the charge. Dozens of civilians have been killed on both sides. The first word of a truce came from President Donald Trump, who posted on his Truth Social platform that India and Pakistan had agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. Congratulations to both countries on using common sense and great intelligence. Thank you for your attention in this matter. Now, this is kind of interesting, and let's go back to Live Map here, and let's take a look at Kashmir. All right, and what you see here is a series of attacks. Basically, this is the borderline. This is India. This is Pakistan, and you see attacks. Okay, by both Syria or by both Pakistan and India as they launch back and forth border raids across this. Okay, this is a very much disputed region. It is it's a region that has a lot of potential. All right, it was a region where, quite frankly, back in the days, someone else that will use that joke. Uh, it, Back in the day, this region was known as a heavily gem encrusted region. People don't may not realize this, but this is where a lot of beautiful gems were found: rubies, emeralds, um, and some of the other sapphires and so forth came from this region. All right, and they were very, very much a part of the road to India and road. The Kashmir was a kind of like a choke point for land travel between the West, i.e., the Mediterranean countries and so forth, right, and India. All right, and it did give, of course, access, gives you an access or a waypoint on the way to China. So it's all part of the Silk Road, and that's why this region was highly prized at one point. Now, modern technology has kind of overshadowed this to a degree, but you can see that these attacks have been pretty severe, all right, all along this border, right? India and Pakistan are very much a an adversary, right? They always have been for a long time. Um, it's a complicated situation. Pakistan is pretty much Islamic only, correct? Yes, Pakistan is for the most part Islamic. Now, I want people to understand something about this region, though. This region is a lot more polyglot than people realize. Yes, it's Islamic. All right, and the northern part of India tends to be Islamic too, by the way. So that's not a you know that's not the only factor here. I just want to point out India, of course, is mainly Hindu or Hindi, um, but there is a large portion of Islam in the northern areas, obviously those border areas of with Pakistan in India. But the the region in Kashmir, all right, was once upon a time an area that had been invaded and settled and conquered by Alexander the Great. And in fact, there are a number of blonde haired, blue eyed natives in that area, all right, from that time period of Mesopotamia when Alexander had conquered that region. So they have a different view of things than many people realize. It was conquered by Led Zeppelin. um, it's an interesting historical region. Okay, Kashmir today, there are a number of people who claim that this area is probably very resource rich. Okay, uh, and by resource rich, I mean very much rich in natural rare earth minerals and so forth that people want to mine. It's a rugged region. It's a mountainous region, so it's hard to get to. Right? Uh, it will be it will be a region that is contested because of the lines that were drawn from the British Empire. Right? And other things that have happened in the past. Right? So the fall of the British Empire. Oh, great. So, but ceasefire. If this ceasefire holds, it's a great thing from the the standpoint of Trump. Trump gets another feather in his cap, which the press will then try to ignore, as they've basically been ignoring most of the things that are going on here. So we'll just have to wait to see how all that plays out. Israel airstrikes kill 23 in Gaza as outcry over aid blockage grows. Gaza City from Wah Wah Shurah. I'm not trying to butcher your name. I can't pronounce it, and I've never heard it. So, but pardon me if I look a bit askance at you with this title. Israeli airstrikes overnight and into Saturday killed at least 23 Palestinians in Gaza, including 3 children and their parents, whose tent was bombed in Gaza City, health officials said. Whose health officials? Right? Hamas health officials? The bombardment continued as international warnings grow over Israeli plans to control aid distribution in Gaza as Israel's blockade on the territory of over 2 million people, all right, is in its 3rd month. The UN and aid groups have rejected Israel's aid distribution moves, including a plan from a group of American security contractors, ex-military officers, and humanitarian aid officials, calling itself the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Among the 23 bodies brought to hospitals over the past 24 hours were those of a family of 5 whose tent was struck in Gaza City's Sabra district, Gaza Health Ministry said. Another Israeli strike late Friday hit a warehouse belonging to UNRWA, all right, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, that was infested with Hamas and was literally helping Hamas carry out the October 7th raids. But they're just a humanitarian group. We'll go on. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees in northern area of Jabalia. All right, 4 people were killed according to the Indonesian hospital where the bodies were taken. AP video shows fires burning in shattered buildings. The warehouse was empty after being hit and raided multiple times during the Israeli ground offensive against Hamas fighters over the past years, said residents including Hamza Mohammed. Military said 9 soldiers were lightly wounded Friday night by an explosive device while searching Gaza City's Sajarah, I'm trying to butcher that name, neighborhood. They said that they were evacuated to a hospital in Israel. Israel resumed its bombardment in Gaza on March 18th, shattering a 2-month ceasefire by Hamas, which Hamas was refusing to live up to, all right, and was actually attacking as well. Ground troops have seized more than half the territory and have been conducting raids and searching parts of northern Gaza and the southernmost city of Rafah. Large areas of both cities have been flattened by months of Israeli operations. Under Israel's blockade, charity kitchens are virtually the only source of food left in Gaza, but dozens have shut down in recent days as food supplies have run out. Welcome to war. Listen, I'm done. I think it's going to be a big deal, but gladly it's not America's fault. Yes, this is not America's fault. Well, in a certain sense, it's our fault in the sense that we have not always been a consistent detractor of Hamas, and we need to put the foot down. All right, that has led to a lot of this. American lack of commitment, American lack of will, when certain individuals were in charge of the country, Obama, Biden, all right, has led to an attitude that, okay, the Americans won't ever really do anything, and they'll support us in the UN. I mean India, the Pakistan thing. Pakistan thing. Look, we have no dog in that fight. That's, to be honest, the country that has the most to lose when those two countries go to war, assuming, notice the word, assuming that they don't start a nuclear, doesn't go nuclear. Okay, the only country that really has a lot to lose, aside from Pakistan and India themselves, is China, because China is helping both sides, but India is now breaking away from China's orbit. China can't afford that, and Pakistan, including Pakistan in China's orbit, causes a problem because you got the Uyghurs. So, flaming nuclear pool could be bad. So, all right, let's take a look at this Israeli Gaza crap. All right, this is the Gaza Strip. As you can see, there's bombings and stuff going on. Yemen has, of course, launched several attacks. Okay, they are no longer attacking ships. They've agreed to stop shooting at ships, but they're still launching missiles at Israel. Okay, so they're not completely pacified, as people would say. Here is the areas that are the most contentious right now. This was the attack they were talking about at Jabalah. All right, in the southern part here. Down here, you have the fights in Rafah. All right, taking place. All right, these were technically, Rafah included, were technically, supposedly, refugee camps. Okay, and of course, this is the border with Egypt. Now, we have repeatedly stated, and Israel has repeatedly stated, well, all Egypt has to do is open its borders up, and you could build all sorts of freaking tents over here and supplies, and all these people could flee, all right, out here and not be killed, all right, um, and they would get aid, and they would be able to drink, and they could sleep at night, and what have you, as long as they accepted the Palestinians. And of course, Egypt has said no. Okay. Now, I'm not going to argue why they say no. Okay, because I fully understand why they're saying no. Right. So the problem still remains the people's support for uh, Hamas. As long as the Palestinians continue to support Hamas, this is going to continue. Okay. Let's get on to some other news. Google agrees to pay Texas 1.4 billion in a privacy data settlement. Google has agreed to pay nearly 1.4 billion to the state of Texas to settle allegations of violating the data privacy rights of state residents, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said on Friday. Paxton sued Google in 2022 for allegedly unlawfully tracking and collecting private data of users. The Attorney General said in a settlement which covers allegations in two separate lawsuits against the search engine giant app, or the app giant rather, dwarfed all past settlements by other states with Google for similar data privacy violations. Google's settlement comes nearly 10 months after Paxton obtained a $1.4 billion settlement for Texas from Meta, or Facebook, the parent company of Instagram, to resolve claims of unauthorized use of biometric data by users of those popular social media platforms. In Texas, big tech is not above the law, Paxton said in a statement on Friday. For years, Google secretly tracked people's movements, private searches, and even their voice prints and facial geometry through their products and services. I fought back and won. This 1.37 billion settlement is a major win for Texas's privacy and tells companies that they will pay for abusing our trust. Well, good. Go after YouTube next, which of course Google owns. No, look, they've been abusing this for a long time because people are disagreeing with so much, and they don't know so much at the same time. There was, and I've argued this with people many times already. The idea of privacy, when you send yourself outside of your house, the idea and expectation of privacy was foolish. It was foolish, and it's one of the Supreme Court decisions. That was a 9-0 ruling, I believe, where the phone companies were, you know, who had been working, specifically Ma Bell had been working directly with the government, and the Supreme Court came down and said, "Look, you're going to need a warrant to tap somebody's phone, rather than asking the phone company, can you list, can you give us this information?" This goes way back, way back, folks. This decision. But what it created in the minds of people was is that I have privacy outside of my home, where that had never been an expectation before. So you've had numerous generations. You've had, since that time, you've had 3 generations growing up with the idea that your privacy, all right, is so sacrosanct that even outside of your home, you have an expectation for it. I've disagreed with that. I always have. Once you give your information to somebody else, your expectation for privacy should be null and void. That's how it's always how it always used to be. That's the thing. It's invading your privacy within your home. Um, it's technology has mucked and murred a lot. Blurred that line. I agree, right? But the moment you put your data out to somebody else, I don't think you should have an expectation for privacy. I really don't, unless you do something to shield it. For example, if you encrypt it, that's where I think a lot of people have gone away things. Does a dishwashing machine need to be connected to the internet to work? No. Look. There are things I totally agree with there. I'm not going to argue with you at that point. China. China has hypersonic missiles in Earth orbit ready to strike. Hints a report. China has appeared to have taken a giant leap forward in a hypersonic race between itself, Russia, and the United States with a new weapon that can be launched from space. Hypersonic missiles can travel some 20 miles or 20 times the speed of sound, making them hard to defend against while also being able to hit global targets within minutes. And now a new study hints the Chinese have stolen a march on its rivals by having weapons parked in orbit ready to strike, according to My News. The research from the People's Liberation Rocket Force outlines the pros and cons of China's re-entry glide missiles, capable of traveling up to 13,000 miles per hour in high altitudes within the atmosphere. The PLARF has also confirmed variants can be launched from space, making them capable of drastically compressing the adversary's early warning system response time and operational scope, thereby enhancing the probability of a successful penetration. Okay, first of all, Taekwon Leap, Taekwon Leap, boot to the head. Ah, that was one of the funniest radio skits I ever heard. Anyway, look it up if you want, if you don't know it. Right, you can listen to it. It's just absolutely hilarious. But and I heard it when it first came out. So I mean, it's just when it was being played on radio way back in the day. But anyway, the weaponization of space. They haven't stolen a march on Russia or the United States because we've had an agreement with each other that we would not put missiles in space. Because we could have. We've had that technology since the 60s. That's the reality. Okay, orbital missile platforms, okay, have been theorized for a long time, and it was a treaty that prevented us from saying that saying we had treaties saying we would not do these kinds of things. Okay, so this isn't stealing a march at anybody. All right, it's just kind of stupid. Yeah, well, it's a hypersonic. Well, if you launch a missile from space, it'll reach hypersonic speeds, PDQ. Okay. How close is it? How close is it to getting done? Hard to say. Okay. Will China put missiles in space? They could, but and they may. Would they be devastating? China's ability to maintain a decent space program, okay, over the long term, is still very suspect. Okay, China is doing things in space. I agree, and they do periodically launch satellites and so forth. Okay, I'm not taking anything away from China, but China's ability to target accurately with their hypersonics. So far, the hypersonic missiles capabilities are sure they're fast, but you can't. They're not hitting targets very easily. They're just not very good at hitting targets. From Europe, the narco subs helping to flood Europe with cocaine. Criminal gangs have improved their design since the capture of Europe's first such vessel in 2019. Vigo, Spain. 3 cardboard boxes labeled Cocaina are dragged across the floor at an undisclosed location run by customs authorities in Galicia, Spain. Authorities remove sealants to reveal that inside each container are dozens of 1 kilogram blocks of cocaine, the officials say. They have a street value of more than 600,000 pounds each, or euros each, rather, not pounds, but euros. Laura Pinero, the head of the customs police in Vigo, lifts them onto a table, causing white powder to spill out as her cold kicks in. She continues as particles of cocaine float around the room. This is just a sample from the shipments we received last year, Pinero said. We have already destroyed a lot of cocaine taken in since 2025. She explains they were running out of room to store it. Huh. I have not heard of one dang thing about the Chinese moon lander. They went to all that trouble just for bragging rights. It's a possibility. Right? They've made some claims. Galicia's rocky coastline, as well as its decades-long cultural ties with Latin American cartels, have made it a hub for what traffickers and authorities have dubbed narco subs. These vessels are rarely full-fledged submarines, but instead are often mini-submersible vessels, predominantly built in the South American jungles. While they have been known to operate in the Pacific Ocean for decades, narco subs have since been found on new routes to Europe and Australia. Authorities say their designs have also become more advanced in recent years. It's like a cat and mouse, says Fernando Iglesias, the head of customs police in Galicia of the dynamic between drug enforcement agents and smugglers. At least 5 narco subs a year could be heading to Galicia, according to Spanish intelligence estimates. As Spanish officials say, cartels are increasingly using underwater smuggling routes for Iglesias and authorities across the continent. Catching the mice has never been harder. In just 4 years, they have developed a better vessel with more capacity, Iglesias said, pointing out how more cocaine found in a narco sub found in 2023 compared to the first one found in Europa in 2019. They are specializing. We need to specialize also for detection. More like cigarette boats than a proper submarine. Okay. I'm not gonna say things, right? Look, these narco subs are not a joke. Okay, the joke is they're using underwater routes. These things are part of a huge industry of shipping, and nobody's going to want to admit this. These subs are basically carried by larger ships where they're deployed. Now, if they're sailing completely across the Atlantic and the Pacific to get to areas, that's a technological feat that's pretty impressive. But I think the vast majority of these things are carried on parasite carriers, for lack of a better term, not basically another ship carrying them to a launch point destination and back and forth again. Because if it can go far enough out of international waters where internationally you have nothing to say or nothing to do, if you don't know that ship is a parasite subship, what are you going to do? That ship could come into port on its own, go back out again. You won't see anything wrong with it because it's launching its cargo out at sea. So I think that's most likely what's really happening. I really do. Trump administration is looking at suspending habeas corpus for migrants, Stephen Miller says. The White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller, said Friday that the Trump administration is actively looking at suspending the writ of habeas corpus, right, the constitutional right to challenge in court the legality of a person's detention by the government for migrants, for illegal aliens. Miller's comment came in response to a White House reporter who asked about President Trump entertaining the idea of suspending the writ to deal with the problem of illegal immigration into the United States. When asked when that might happen, Miller responded, "The Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of writ of habeas corpus, all right, can be suspended in times of invasion. If Trump declares this an invasion, something that I recommend that he do, then this could go into effect." Okay, the judges are getting absolutely ridiculous. Miller spoke hours after a federal judge in Vermont issued a release of Tufts University student Remeza Ozaturk from the custody of the United States Immigration Authorities. Ozaturk had been in prison for 45 days after the Trump administration revoked the Turkish citizen's student visa on an assessment that she may undermine U.S. foreign policy by creating a hostile environment for Jewish students and indicating support for a designated terrorist organization. Ozaturk challenged her detention with a petition for writ of habeas corpus, which she noted that she has not been charged with any crime, which argued that her arrest and detention are designed to punish her speech and chill the freedom of others. But you have been charged with a crime. All right? You've been charged with the crime of violating your visa. See, this is the problem with these liars. Miller said that Trump's decision on whether to suspend writ of habeas corpus depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. Miller implied that the right thing is for judges to stop blocking the administration's deportation of immigrants in cases where those people are exercising habeas writs. The writ been suspended been suspended only 4 times since the U.S. Constitution was ratified, but in all but one of those instances, Congress first authorized the use. All right, well, that's all well and good. All right, that's all well and good, but look, I understand that people talk this is a slippery slope. Then stop doing this kind of bullshit. Stop putting these illegals ahead and these illegal aliens, all right, that are having their visas revoked because of their criminal activities in America, activities that go against their visas to begin with, and get rid of them. It amazes me that a Tufts University student held in Louisiana can get a stay, an order of release from a Vermont federal judge. And that they think that this is perfectly acceptable. No, it's not perfectly acceptable. Leave the country. You don't want to. You want to sit up there and write propaganda, constant propaganda, fueling hatred in this country for this country, and also for U.S. foreign policy and for American citizens because they happen to be of one descent or another descent, which they don't really care which one it is. Leave. From the Washington Post, how two unmarked SUVs fan fears that ICE was detaining nannies in D.C. Oh, the horror! By the time lawyers arrived Wednesday morning at a leafy playground in one of the district's most affluent neighborhoods, the rumors had already alarmed parents across the city. ICE agents were taking nannies and leaving children in the park. Messages on group emails, WhatsApp chats, and text chains warned. Not trying to create hysteria, yes you were, all right, began one message that ricocheted from one parent to another. It went on, they are in Forest Hills right now in full tactical gear, and children are being left behind. As concern grew, neighbors lined the block. An elected official jetted to the Forest Hills playground. Immigration's attorneys handed out Know Your Rights cards in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole to any nannies they could find. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials later told the Washington Post that agents had not targeted nannies at a playground nor any other district this week. Still, the unease is growing. So, in other words, the illegal aliens that are being illegally hired by the wealthy, affluent asshat Democrats in D.C. are where they're being paid under the table, are all up in arms. All right? And if the children are being left, children are not being left. If they grab a freaking nanny and the nanny's got children under their care, they're not leaving the children just laying there in a playground. They're taking them with them because they have no idea who the children are. What the hell do you think is going on? This kind of nonsense is just that. It's nonsense. But it does tell you something. It tells you that these people throughout D.C. are knowingly hiring illegal aliens, committing crimes themselves. And they should be charged. Hopefully, soon, they will be. Nebraskan jailed for lightsaber attacks. A Nebraska man is behind bars on a pair of felony charges for allegedly striking a female neighbor and the woman's 7-year-old daughter with a Star Wars lightsaber, according to court records. Investigators allege that Adian Orion White, 25, first struck the girls while he was while she was playing with other children in the front yard of her Auburn home. When the child's mother, Sandra Lundgren, 37, confronted White, he yelled at her, "I'm not in the mood. Get back in your effing house." White then allegedly charged Lundgren wielding his lightsaber and arrest affidavit charges. Aiden struck Lundgren on her right arm and shoulder, reported a sheriff's deputy. Both Lundgren and her daughter said they were in pain by the library streets lightsaber strikes. Look, he's gone to the dark side. All right. I'm not trying to make light of this, folks, but I'm not going to blow this out of proportion either. This guy was charged with 2 felony assaults and is being held on $50,000 bail. I'm not saying he was right. I'm not saying he should have hit the kid. Don't know what happened there. Really don't. Guy could have been just having a bad day. Guy could have been tweaking and then came down and now he's in a bad mood. Who knows? They should be happy he didn't shoot lightning out of his fingers. All right. But if there's not any bruises, this stuff should not be listed as a felony offense. I'm serious. I am so serious about that. Right? Now, attacking a child, that could be a felony offense regardless. Right? But this nonsense about how serious some of this stuff is has gotten kind of out of control, in my opinion. Trump announces deal to stop bombing the Houthis and shipping attacks. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday that the U.S. will stop bombing the Houthis in Yemen, saying that the Iran-aligned group has agreed to stop interrupting important shipping lanes in the Middle East. After Trump made the announcement, Oman said that it had mediated the ceasefire deal, marking a major shift in Houthi policy since the start of Israel's war in Gaza in October of 2023. Under the agreement, neither the United States nor the Houthis would target each other, including U.S. vessels in the Red Sea Bab al-Mandab Strait, Oman said in a statement. The statement from Oman did not mention whether the Houthis had agreed to stop attacks on Israel, which they haven't. The head of Yemen's Houthi Supreme Political Council, Mahdi al-Mashrat, said the group would continue to support Gaza and that such attacks would continue. To all the Zionists, from now on, stay in shelters or leave to your countries immediately, as your failed government will not be able to protect you after today. Okay, sooner or later, this is going to come down to B-52s. Just putting it out there. Just some floppy plastic is not a knife to the heart. All right. Sooner or later, it's going to take B-52s and a carpet bombing type of understanding. All right, because that's all they understand. I know people don't like that. I know people are, they think that that's. How can you say such a thing? No, man, how can you say such a thing? What are you going to do to stop it? Now, they have an agreement. We'll see if the Houthis live up to it. I figure about 6 months later, we'll be back bombing the shit out of them again because they're not going to live up to it. Just pointing it out. That's how I feel. That's what I think is going to be the result. Holman and Norm tear into Pritzker for refusing to help feds deport dangerous criminals. He continues to lie. Border czar Tom Holman, right, slammed Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker for the state's sanctuary policies protecting illegal aliens, all right, arguing that he has lied on the issue after the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, protested alongside angel families demanding change. Pritzker Holman accused Pritzker of lying about the state's policies addressing illegal immigration during a Fox and Friends, alleging that officials in Chicago, a migrant hotbed, refused to work with federal officials to get dangerous criminals off the street. He continues to lie about sanctuary city status in the state, in Chicago especially. Holman told Lawrence Jones on Thursday. One of the first places I went to after President Trump took an oath of office was Chicago. The first day we arrested like 9 TDA members. All right, we arrested 2 illegal aliens that were convicted of murder that were walking the streets. We arrested, I think, 6 or 7 child predators, child rapists in Chicago, and these people are all walking the streets because the Cook County Jail, one of the biggest jails in the nation, won't accept ICE detainers. They won't work with ICE. That's because people like J.D. Pritzker are typical of Democrats. They lie. They lie all the time. It's not about. It's about whatever they can use, right, to make themselves look good. It has nothing to do with helping people. Personally, if they do have evidence that he himself has ordered these people not to work with the feds, he should be charged with a crime, and he should be arrested. Meanwhile, south of the border, Mexico sues Google over Gulf of Mexico name change. Mexico has filed a legal lawsuit against Google for labeling the Gulf of Mexico as Gulf of America on a Google map for American users, arguing that the move violates the sovereignty and international recognition of Mexican territory. Really? So the Gulf of Mexico is Mexico's, huh? Apparently. Scheinbaum, and yes, that's the president of Mexico, all right, I told a regular morning press conference that Google has already been sued and that a first resolution has been issued and is awaiting compliance. The United States could change the name of a state, a mountain, a lake, and call it whatever they decide if it's within their territories. But those on the Mexican and Cuban sides cannot be renamed, the Mexican president said, noting that Google must clearly distinguish the respective areas. We will show you, America! We will sue you! Yeah, that'll work. Let's rename Mexico. I don't know. Stupid shit, folks. Stupid shit. Women are being body slammed in terrifying trends spreading across London. A 20-year-old woman was left with whiplash after she was bodily slammed to the ground by a huge man as part of a worrying incel trend known in Japan as Butusakari Otaku. Otoko, excuse me. All right, that is infiltrating London. So they're blaming Japan for this, not America. Aliyah Melik, right, was walking along Mile End Canal with a friend when she was knocked to the ground by a runner with so much force it knocked the air out of her lungs on Saturday. The marketer had tried to move out of the way of the man who was running and grunting toward her at full speed, but he instead went straight through her. The 20-year-old told Metro, after he collided with me, I heard a grunt of satisfaction from him. Bear in mind, he is huge, around 6'4". As he came towards me, I turned my body to make a gap for him to run through, but instead he ran at me with full speed and completely bodied me. Now, from the way she's describing this, she didn't really try to get out of the way. Okay? I mean, I'm just pointing out, I turned my body. Did you try to get out of the way or not? Right? I don't know if that's trying to get out of the way, especially how it ever happened. It felt like he was trying to knock me into the canal, but the way my body turned, it meant that I hit the ground instead. Alea was knocked face first to the ground so hard that it knocked the air out of her lungs and left her with cuts on her hands, arms, and whiplash across her upper body. Yeah, lady, that. Hoping it was an accident, Alea didn't report it to the police until a couple approached her afterwards and revealed that the attacker had knocked an elderly man into the canal just hours before hitting her. They saw I was crying and heard what happened and came and told me that he actually pushed someone into the water, Alea said. That's when I knew it wasn't an accident. And it might not have been. Okay? Budo Sakari Odoko, all right, is a trend originated in Japan which translates bumping man. All right, it started with men ramming into women in busy train stations, but has since spread outside of stations into streets and now into other countries. The attacker gets off on feeling superior to the victim, who is often left shaken and injured after the incident. Attacker Daisuke Nagata confirmed this, replying, because it felt good when he was asked why he was slamming people or slamming into women in Tokyo. Look, you're a perverted loon if you're doing this. I'm just you're a loon if you're doing this. Right? You're a loon. Okay? Now I'm hoping that this was truly an accident, right? But I will say this about the guy. You're not a man. And I say that not because of an accident. I'm saying I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt it was an accident. But if you run into somebody and knock them down accidentally, you stop and pick them up and say you're sorry. I am not in for tongue twisters today, James. uh, I'm just running into people since the guy whose generation invented mosh pits. I can't say that I haven't been in a mosh pit. Okay, just have to come clean. I have to be fully transparent here, in all transparency. Yes, I have been in a mosh pit. I have participated in them uh, from time to time, back in the day. All right, when I was a younger lad, I should say. Cops, Walmart shoplifter 73 claimed the devil made her do it. Excuse me. That is what a 73-year-old woman told Florida cops when she was arrested Saturday evening for allegedly shoplifting merchandise from Walmart. Police said that Angela Vasquez Torrado, was stopped by Walmart security when she sought to exit the Tampa area store with $121 worth of goods: shampoo, socks, men's shorts, etc. 73-year-old woman running around with men's shorts. According to investigators, Toborado, whatever your name is, all right, Angela. All right, Angela, according to investigators, initially denied swiping the merch, but later admitted they did attempt to leave the store without paying for these items. As for the motive, of the fully alleged larcenies, cops report that Angela stated that they were told by the devil to buy them for someone else, but that she did not have enough money, so she was attempting to leave with them. The arrest affidavit does not further describe Angela's conversation with the devil, who has not been charged in connection with the misdemeanor retail theft. Seen above, she was released from county jail after posting $150 bond. Well, a judge ordered her to stay away from Walmart. Angela is not barred from contact with the mythical personification of evil. Um, why isn't this woman being held and turned over to psychologists? Okay, this is one of the things that has happened in this country, right? When they ended mental facilities, right? These mental hospitals and stuff, so forth. All right, and I'm not saying that these things were great places to be, all right, and that the system wasn't being abused. But the reality is this woman needs psychiatric help. Okay, she needs psychiatric help. Maybe the devil really did need socks. These, and I know that this woman isn't a threat to society per se, or a large threat to society, but she's not going to get help apparently the way the system is designed. You know, I'm just pointing that out. U.S. judge halts land exchange, all right, for the Rio Tinto copper mine opposed by Native Americans. A U.S. federal judge on Friday temporarily blocked the Trump administration from transferring land to the Rio Tinto, all right, for a copper mine opposed by Native Americans, citing the Supreme Court's ongoing deliberation in the complex case. The long-running fight over the Resolution Copper project pits the religious rights of Arizona's San Carlos Apache people, all right, against the rising demand for copper for energy transition and Washington's drive to expand mineral production. In an 18-page order, U.S. District Judge Stephen Logan said the Apache Stronghold, a nonprofit group of the Apaches and their allies, is likely to succeed in its appeal to the Supreme Court, and thus the land transfer should be halted for now. No, they won't succeed. And this is the problem with these kinds of judges, is they run again and again and again. All right, these environmentalist Nazis, and that's who these are. Oh, you cannot sit there and land and take our land. Well, we consider this a religious thing. All of the land in America is religious. This shit's out of control. The shit is absolutely out of control. And these judges have to be stopped at some point. David Hogg tried pitching a compromise to the DNC. He was rebuffed. The 25-year-old's chair's plan to attack asleep at the wheel Democrats has rattled the party. David Hogg, the Democrat National Committee official who ignited a firestorm inside the party with his pledge to fund primary challenges to asleep at the wheel Democrats, privately pitched a compromise to the party head in recent days. Speaking with the DNC chair Ken Martin, Hogg proposed a so-called internal firewall in which he would stay on as vice chair but be barred from accessing any internal DNC information about congressional and state legislative races as long as he was supporting challengers. all right, according to 3 people familiar with their conversations and granted anonymity to describe them. Martin shot down the idea, the people said, expressing confidence that he could win the votes at the DNC to pass a rule requiring party officials to remain neutral in primaries, essentially forcing Hogg to drop his primary project or step down. Jane Cleave, a Martin Alloy and another DNC vice chair, said she also spoke with Hogg about his proposed compromise. She called it nonsense and argued it is not the DNC's job to create a firewall for one officer. The problem is if Hogg gets tossed, okay, he's taking a core portion of the DNC with him. And the DNC is now, it's becoming obvious to everybody. The DNC is out of control. It is completely out of control. It has no ability to control its own party. That's a reality. The DNC is self-destructing on the inside because it has never been about this group or that group or this group or that. It's always been about power and pushing Marxism. And now it's a threat to that power. Because the true Marxists don't know what the hell they're doing. Marxism constantly fails. And Hogg, like the good little proto-Marxist that he is, lies to people, lies continuously, all right? And it makes an issue because he knows he's never going to be getting hard questions. Update story time. Defunct Soviet-era spacecraft falls into the Indian Ocean. A long-defunct Soviet spacecraft has re-entered the Earth's atmosphere and has fallen into the Indian Ocean, the Russian Space Authority said Saturday. Cosmos 482 entered the dense layers of the atmosphere at 9:24 Moscow time, 6:24 GMT, on Saturday, 560 kilometers west of Middle Andaman Island, and fell into the Indian Ocean west of Jakarta, the Russian Space Corporation Roscosmos said in a statement. The spacecraft's descent was closely monitored by Russia's automated warning system for hazardous situations in near-Earth space, Roscosmos said. Cosmos 482 was originally launched in the spring of 1972 as part of a Soviet mission to explore Venus. However, due to a malfunction, the probe failed to leave the Earth's orbit and remained in a high elliptical orbit, gradually spiraling closer to the planet over the past 5 decades. Okay, so the real concern with this satellite was that it was part of the Russian lander program. They were expected to land on Venus. Now, for those who don't know, the only nation to successfully land a probe onto the surface of Venus and have it transmit data back has been Russia, or the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union. Okay, and the reason for that is the heat on the surface of Venus, the pressure, all right, on the actual atmospheric pressure, all right, on Venus, combined with the caustic nature of the atmosphere on Venus. Okay, Venus is they talk about the runaway, what do they call it, runaway greenhouse effect. It is that um, it it's not just that, right? It's the entire aspect of the planet itself. Okay, I think one of the things that I've always kind of thought about is the mentality where people talk about the Goldilocks zone. Okay, hey Britisher, hail Hydra. The Goldilocks zone theoretically extends all the way to the orbit of Venus for our sun, supposedly. Okay, but when you're that much closer to the sun, you're that much more influenced by the tidal aspect of circling the sun. Okay, and as a result, the continental shifts and so forth are different. Okay, which makes the interior of Venus problematic. For example, the crust probably has a lot more issues. In fact, we know it has a lot more issues when it comes to things like volcanoes and so forth. Now, we don't know all the ins and outs of that, but I suspect that that has something to do with it. I suspect that the quote unquote Goldilocks zone that they constantly refer to is a lot narrower than people expect it to be. Okay. Married couple fingered for lewd conduct at a Florida bar. Again, Florida is featured prominently here. A married couple was arrested Sunday evening for allegedly engaging in lewd activity at a sidewalk cafe in Florida, according to court records. Ryan Cook, 29, and Kimberly Morey, 27, were at the Where's Jubes bar in downtown St. Petersburg, another in the Tampa, Florida area, right? When the disorderly conduct occurred, police say. According to a witness, Cook placed his hand up his wife's dress, all right, and touched her private parts, which reportedly caused a disturbance and a breach of peace. Morey was charged for allowing her husband to place his hand up her dress and engage in sexual conduct. Arrest affidavits did not identify the witness who fingers the frisky couple. Pictured above, Cook and Morey were each charged with disorderly conduct, a misdemeanor, and possession of an open container, bottles of Captain Morgan rum. They pleaded no contest to the charge, and a judge adjudicated them guilty and fined them each $500. The couple was subsequently freed from the county jail. And we continue. South Korean temple returns stolen Buddha statue to Japanese owner. A South Korean temple that claimed ownership of a 14th century Buddhist statue stolen from a Japanese temple in 2012 handed it over to the Japanese owner on Saturday. While the statue, taken by South Korean thieves, has been recovered by local authorities, the Busoka Temple in Seohwan, in southwest of Seoul, claimed that it was looted from the temple by Japanese pirates centuries ago. People representing Kannoji, a temple on Japan's Tsushima Island of Nagasaki in Nagasaki Prefecture, said that they will return the statue to the temple on Monday. The South Korean temple showed the statue to visitors for 100 days before returning it. In 2017, the Daejeon District Court ordered the government to transfer the statue to the Busoko Temple, hurting Japan and South Korean ties already soured by historical issues. In 2023, the Daejeon High Court overturned the district ruling, and the South Korea's Supreme Court upheld the decision later that year. International thieves aren't just for Americans anymore. Resemble the baby box. More disturbing incidents. The crime that revolted Britain, how a farmer caught twisted pervert abusing their calves with a covert camera operation, and 3 years later it has changed their lives forever. A farming couple used a secret camera to catch a perverted worker having sex with their calves has revealed that they are still rocked by the trauma 3 years later. Ian and Tracy Farwell still have the CCTV cameras monitoring their livestock 24/7 and are trying to reclaim thousands of pounds they lost through Liam Brown's action. The couple hit the headlines in December of 2023 when Brown was sentenced for sexual penetration of a live animal and causing unnecessary suffering to a protected animal. The Farwells knew something was wrong when the cows on their fourth generation farm kept mysteriously dying. But despite suspicious things like gates left open and rubber gloves strewn around, the police say there was little they could do unless the family caught the culprit in the act. The issues started in January 2022 before Brown was arrested, and they had between 20 to 30 calves die at the farm in Burton Christchurch in Dorset. Over a 6-month period, the couple found surgical gloves, a discarded cow rope, and a pair of trousers scattered around their fourth generation farm. Determined to get to the bottom of the matter, they installed several CCTV cameras in the cowshed and devised a plan to catch the culprit. They finally caught him with their son when their son Ralph heard a calf in distress and saw a figure in the pen with young cows on CCTV. Several family members surrounded the cowshed, blocking all the exits. Brown tried to flee but jumped over a fence and into another pen and was trampled by the cows. All right, Farwells surrounded him and realized it was Brown, the son of a former farm worker who they had known since he was 5. He avoided jail and was handed a community order with unpaid work and was ordered to pay the Farwells £600 in compensation, which Farwell said what he has paid. She said it has not seen or heard from him since, but she still worries every morning that he will make a midnight visit. I always worry that he might come back. I still check the shed every morning, and I hope that he hasn't been there. And we still have CCTV cameras set up. But thankfully, I've seen nothing of him since the court case, and he did pay the compensation. It's a huge relief not walking around the farm and finding dead or dying calves anymore. All right, deaths do happen, but I think that we've had maybe 9 since April of last year when he was doing what he was doing. We had up to 30. All right, look, folks, I'm going to blame the police on this. Okay, I am going to really blame the police in this entire regard, and I'm going to blame the judicial system. This guy wasn't even jailed. They didn't even jail this degenerate. You're gonna tell me that lewd acts with a calf that is literally killing the animal? 30 animals died as a result of his activities, and yet this guy walks. Pays restitution of £600, and there's not a problem with the judicial system. Really? Sustainable switch, climate focus. EU softens car emission targets. Huh. Realization that they're going to fail here. Hello! After focusing on a myriad of social and governance rollbacks in the United States this week, today's newsletter turns its attention to Europe. This week, the European Parliament gave its backing to soften the EU CO2 emission targets for cars, vans, and reduce potential fines for automakers. Following heavy lobbying, the European Commission proposed allowing automakers to meet the targets based on their average emissions over a period between 2025 and 2027 rather than just this year. The EU lawmakers voted by 458 votes to 101 in favor of the change. Want to bet that this gets changed more? because the targeted missions are not possible. You see, the targeted missions were written by people who have no real understanding of something called science that they all claim to adhere to. The world isn't what these people think it is. We're going to find out the hard way. They're going to keep shifting this. I guarantee you they're going to keep shifting this because the targets that they've put in place are not sustainable. They talk about sustainability. You don't know what sustainability is. They don't. They use words like that to cover up what their real agenda is. Yes, Dankula was jailed for a joke. This guy gets off walking around. It's unbelievable. It's okay. Americans are stupid too. An American tourist, suffers horrific fate while attempting to capture a selfie at Rome's Colosseum. An American man impaled himself on a metal fence at the Roman Colosseum while attempting to snap a selfie on Friday afternoon. Must have been a hell of a selfie. A 47-year-old man was dangling from a fence and screaming until he fell unconscious after becoming badly wounded at the iconic Roman landmark. The unidentified man, a U.S. citizen currently residing in Taiwan, was seen climbing the perimeter railings that surrounded the Colosseum's lower arches, perhaps to gain a better view or, as local press speculated, to capture a dramatic photo. But his quest for the perfect shot ended with a horrific accident. According to Mesegaru, I don't know what the name of the paper, I'm not trying to butcher it, I can't pronounce that. Right, the man lost his footing while scaling the fence and was impaled through the spine by a sharpened metal spike. Witnesses rushed to call emergency services, and although the paramedics arrived on the scene quickly, it took them more than 20 grueling minutes to remove the man from the spike. It was a complex operation, one first responder told the operation. He was losing a lot of blood, and we had to work with extreme caution. The tourist was transported in a code red condition, a designation used for life-threatening emergencies, to the San Giovannino Hospital, where doctors performed emergency surgery. He required more than 80 stitches, but by Friday night, doctors had declared him out of immediate danger and in serious but stable health condition. The man had been in Rome with his family and friends for several days before the accident and was later questioned by the Carabinieri police. His travel companions were also interviewed by authorities but were unable to explain what had motivated the idiot. The dangerous climb is what it says. No official statement has been released by Italian law enforcement regarding potential charges. It was noted that the man might have been trying to capture a closer view of the Colosseum, perhaps for an unforgettable selfie. This was the first time, this isn't the first time, rather, that Americans have made headlines for questionable behavior at the iconic amphitheater. In 2021, two American tourists were fined €800 for illegally sneaking into the Colosseum at night, reportedly to drink beer inside of the rooms. These must have been the spikes he fell on. It said that it pierced his spine. All right, I'm hoping that it didn't break the spinal cord. Okay, I'm hoping he's not paralyzed for life. Okay, but dude, you are an idiot. Just put it out there. Okay, we're getting toward the end, but we still have a number of stories. Police! Nurse battered her wife with cheesy nachos. A nurse who has been accused of shoving cheesy nachos down the leggings of her wife during a 3 a.m. domestic battery, Florida police alleged. Investigators say that the 40-year-old victim was making nachos with nacho cheese in the kitchen when her spouse, Allison Swan, told her she shouldn't be eating this late and made a comment about her weight. During the argument that ensued, Swan, who had been playing video games in the living room, walked over to her spouse, grabbed a handful of cheesy nachos, and shoved them down the back of the victim's leggings. When the victim, who is also a registered nurse, subsequently sought to change her clothes, Swan allegedly dragged her to the floor and shoved her fingers into either side of her mouth and hooked them like a fish. Allison then continued to batter her by grabbing her head and slamming it into the floor multiple times. During the confrontation, the victim told police Swan made several comments that she was the one in charge and her wife was not behaving. Uh, uh, I am not even going to comment any further. Dun, 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 dun. Could AI translate animal sounds into words? Tech experts hope so. Oh my lord. The proposed systems hope to use AI to recognize a pet's emotional state, then translate it into language. A Chinese tech company has revealed it is exploring whether it's possible to use AI to translate animal sounds into human language. Baodu, the owner of China's largest search engine, has filed a patent with China's National Intellectual Properties Administration. The plans were revealed in a patent document published last week. The patent is for a system that collects animal data like vocal sounds, behavior, and psychological signals. It would then be processed and merged before an AI powered analysis is designed to recognize the animal's emotional state. Those, those emotional states could then be translated into human language and improve the accuracy and efficiency of cross species communications. Food, food, food. Oh, yeah. All right. We are, as you can see, we are in the animal portion of the story. Alligator kills woman in Florida after tipping over her canoe. Cynthia Dekima and husband were paddling in the mouth of the river when the startled animal thrashed and capsized the canoe. The alligator killed a Florida woman after tipping over a canoe she and her husband were paddling. All right, in what investigators say appeared to be an accidental encounter. The attack happened on Tuesday afternoon near the mouth of the Tiger Creek, all right, into Lake Kissimmee, south of Orlando. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission said it is near the location of a March alligator attack in which a woman was bitten on the elbow while kayaking. Investigators said at a news conference on Wednesday that the couple was canoeing in about 2.5 feet of water when they came upon a large alligator. The startled animal thrashed suddenly, tipping over the canoe, sending both parties into the water. It sounds like the canoe drifted over the top of an alligator and the alligator was startled. Witnesses told investigators the husband tried to fight off the animal but was unsuccessful. Fish and Wildlife Commission officials identified the victim as 61-year-old Cynthia Dekima of Davenport, Florida. It's not clear if her husband was injured. A trapper captured the alligator measuring more than 11 feet, all right, long, that was suspected of being the animal involved, but investigators caught another large alligator that could also have been responsible for the attack. And you wonder why I stay out of the water. If this is only in 2 foot of water and you couldn't see an alligator this big, now I don't know when they were kayaking. I mean, and and so forth. But I think they should have been a little bit more aware of what was going on around them in this case. Loss of life is horrible. Bear wanders into an Ohio apiary and eats an entire beehive. An Ohio beekeeper received an alert from his surveillance cameras that showed that his apiary was being raided by another local resident, a bear. Jeff Bonner, who has been beekeeping for just over a year in Bezetta Township, said his motion-activated cameras alerted him to activity around his hives. I looked at my bee cameras and I thought, holy smokes, there's a bear in my bees. Yogi? It wasn't Winnie. Pooh Bear, oh bother. Bonner rushed to his apiary where he found that the bear had already gone along with one of his hives. He found the hive out there in the woods. The frames I found were basically clean. It looked like he ate the frame, the wax that was there, and the bees. Everything was gone. The hive had been home to between 10,000 to 50,000 bees. He literally ate the hive, the whole hive of bees. Bonner alerted the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, which advised him to increase the security. Oh, there's a bear there. Well, looks sucks for you. How to increase security? Security's not the problem. I think you'd better figure out a way of keeping these things out. He said that the new measures include more cameras and a homemade electric fence. The wildlife officer recommended putting peanut butter on it so that if he licks it and sniffs it and he gets a shock in the face, that tends to make them hesitant to go to the fence. Otherwise, they're pretty stubborn. It'll take a shock to get the honey. All right. Bonner said he will remain vigilant. He's full and he knows where the honey is. He'll be back because he knows there's food here. He needs that Roman fence. Bears are tough and so forth. A sad story. This is a sad story because this woman's an idiot. Woman arrested after raccoon named Chewy found with a meth pipe in the driver's seat during a police stop. Meth raccoons. A woman has been arrested after a raccoon named Chewy was found holding a meth pipe in the driver's seat of her car in what police are calling a strange encounter on the highway patrol. The incident occurred on Monday at approximately 7:15 p.m. when Springfield Township Police Officer Austin Branham decided to conduct a traffic stop on South Arlington Road after identifying a vehicle whose registered owner had an active warrant and a suspended driver's license, according to a statement from the Springfield Township Police Department on Tuesday. When Officer Branham approached the car, he found 55-year-old Victoria Vidal of Akron, Ohio, and was able to detain her without incident, authorities said. However, things took an unusual turn, according to the police statement. As the officer returned to the vehicle, he noticed a raccoon named Chewy sitting in the driver's seat with a meth pipe in his mouth. Chewy had gotten a hold of a glass methamphetamine pipe, leading the police officers to further inspect the vehicle. Police did confirm that Chewy was a pet raccoon and that he was not a wild animal after Vidal had an appropriate paperwork and documentation to own him. However, a subsequent search revealed that Vidal's car contained a bulk amount of methamphetamine, crack cocaine, and 3 used glass amphetamine pipes. Vidal was charged with F3 possession of drugs, 3 counts of possession of drug paraphernalia, and was cited for driving under suspension. She was also subsequently turned over to the Cuyahoga Falls Police on an active warrant where additional charges related to crack cocaine possession will be presented at a grand jury pending lab results. Hopefully Chewy the raccoon is unharmed. Final story of the day. Final story. Cat stows away under the hood of a state senator's vehicle. An animal control officer in Pennsylvania came to the rescue of a stowaway cat found crying under the hood of a state senator's vehicle. Middleton Township Police Department said on social media that the state senator Frank Ferry, Republican District 6, was driving this week when he heard an animal crying under the hood of his vehicle. He looked under the hood and caught a glimpse of a naughty kitty stowaway hiding in the engine compartment. An animal control officer was able to coax out the kitten, who was completely uninjured. Luckily, it didn't catch fan belt disease, because that's often what happens. The cat was taken to the women's animal shelter in Bensalem while officials attempt to find its owner. In rural areas, okay, in rural areas in the wintertime, cats are known to crawl into the hoods of vehicles, into the engine compartments of vehicles, because there's residual warmth there after they were just parked. This happens more than people realize, and unfortunately, many of these animals die by what we in the farming community at the time called fan belt disease. Because if you don't know that there's an animal up under your hood of your vehicle and you turn it over because you've got to drive to town, if the cat's head is in the wrong spot when the belts start turning, it happens. Sad, but it happens. All right, everybody. That's all I've got for today's show. Thank you for coming out, listening. Hope that you all have a good day. And I will talk at you all later. Bye-bye, everybody.